Hi, it's Miriam Kane, and thank you for joining me as we explore the Pez principle, alignment, and neutral spine. When we talk about a stable structure, we have to bring in alignment, right? So ideally, when we're stable, our muscles and our ligaments and tendons would not even be necessary to hold us upright. We would be able to stack our bones one on top of the other. And since we don't live in that perfect world, we end up having actual compensation, which can be increased by our alignment, or some people will say posture. And there's going to be deviations. We're humans, but there are some basics that we do want to focus on. One being the foot, creating a tripod for us to stand on. So the big toe metatarsal, not the big toe itself, but the knuckle above it is where we really want to feel a little bit of pressure. The toes fan out, create little paddles to help us balance. And then the pinky toe metatarsal, which again is at the base of the pinky toe, and then the heel. So if you'll rock forward and back, and then try to settle into right over top of that tripod. We're going to skip the knee because it's somewhat the middle child between the hip and the foot. The hip has so much to do with the way that the foot behaves. And we're going to go to our femurs, these thigh bones, and I want you to turn them out slightly. And they're only going to turn out so far. But when we turn these out, you're going to notice that your glutes kick in and that your arch might lift up. And this is what we mean by the hips dictating a bit of what's happening at the feet, if not a lot. And a way that I like to show that is what we call the Pez. I borrowed this from someone, and forgive me, I can't remember who it was, but it was a great example, so I'm borrowing it, not my original work. We're going to use a yoga block as our Pez. So if you remember what a Pez dispenser, candy dispenser is, imagine you are one. And so when you're standing, I'm standing on my tripod, and what we're going to do is we're going to turn the femurs out. And when we do, you're going to notice that this Pez, you're dispensing a Pez. So you can do this with a book, you can do it with a roller, but I want you to practice it where you're on your tripod of your foot, forgive me for repeating, and then you're going to externally rotate slightly at the very top of your femur, not to clench your glutes, but just to feel that they're active. And when you see whatever item you have here as a Pez go forward, then you'll be able to feel and notice that sensation of the pelvic stability. And even more so, you're going to notice that your pubic bone and your hip bones are in the same plane. So right now, let's just say they're flat in the front, hip bones, pubic bone. And if I allow myself to lose that Pez and that my hip bones would go forward, I would be in what's considered an anterior tilt of the pelvis. See where it's going forward at the hips. And when I Pez, they're neutral. And if I was really to tuck, I would be in what's called a posterior tilt or tuck of the pelvis. So we don't want to live in this position, nor do we want to live in this position. We want to be able to find ourselves mostly in a neutral position as our start position. But we move in and out of that all the time in life, yes? But we want to be able to find this as our resting position. And then we'll put this down. We would go up to the next segment of the spine. So we've looked at our tripod of the foot. We found the Pez that helped us find the position of our pelvis, which is hip bones, pubic bones, same plane. And then that's really going to dictate where we're at in our lumbar spine. The next segment of our spine is our thoracic. If you put your fingers on the 10th ribs, the ones that poke out, you've got two little floaters below that. That's going to allow us to bend and rotate. But this 10th rib, if you breathe in to your waist, if you create crab claws and you inhale, you're going to feel that you expand. And then when you exhale, you drop them down. And for the sake of rest and engagement of your core, you want to notice that your ribs are typically down. That would mean that your obliques, your abdominals are engaged and you're supported by your abdominals. So your core, when I say abdominals, it's not just abdominals. The core is from the pelvic floor to the diaphragm. I like to think of the glutes as being part of the core. They're certainly important. But for now, we're thinking exhaling the ribs down. And that's going to keep us from an open position for those of us that like to do that, or even for those of us that tuck. We notice that the mid-back is going to round, what we call kyphosis. We don't want that either. And because of life and being on devices, we're seeing a lot more of that. So we want to think about length, reaching, lifting our hearts. So think about this for a moment. You've got the tripod of your foot. You've got your pelvis that you've created a neutral base, right? So you're stable. And then you're going to go to your thoracic cage, because that's what it is. It's connected to all the vertebrae of your thoracic spine, your rib cage. And if you put a hand on your heart, I want you to think of lifting your heart without lifting your ribs. And that can really be challenging. And it's small, but it's huge, and it means a lot. And then we're going to go to the cervical spine, which is our neck, and it's the most mobile part of the spine. And because so many of us are in this position of being at our devices, what happens is the brain always wants to know where we're going. So the eyes are going to go to the horizon no matter what. So if we're in this position, you're going to start to notice that you may have a lot of tension in your neck because your brain wants to see where you're going. So what we want to think about for a nice neutral alignment is lengthening through the crown of your head. So just a little recap. Our feet create a tripod that are facing forward, ideally. Our femurs are slightly turned out enough to feel that the glutes are working and to feel that the pubic bone and hip bones, what we call the hip bones, are these pointy guys in the front, ASIS bones, are in the same plane, that our heart is lifted, but our ribs are down. So we feel work and length in here if we're not used to that. And then a nice long neck. So dropping the chin, nose are pointing forward, eyes on the horizon. And for that, we're just going to take a breath now into our rib cage and exhale any tension you might have in your knees. The knees are the middle child between the foot and the hip, and they tend to take on a lot of tension that's unnecessary, but we'll talk about that later.